The JFK 35 podcast is made possible through generous support from the Blanche and Irving Laurie Foundation.
JFK 35 is a production of the JFK Library Foundation. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of others at the JFK Library Foundation or the JFK Library, including staff, board, or donors. The material and information presented here is for general historical and educational information purposes only. The views expressed in the podcast are not meant to imply any endorsement of or opposition to any organization or political party.
Yeah, everybody loves the making of the superhero and that origin story.
Every item in the JFK Library holds a story. Stories of a family, a presidency, and a legacy that continues to shape history. This season, we're hearing from the JFK Library and Foundation staff about the pieces that inspired them most.
To kick off our 15th season, Library Director Alan Price takes us from the battlefields of World War II to the wedding of John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Bouvier, two moments that helped shape our 35th president. That's next on JFK 35.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Hello, I'm Matt Porter.
And I'm Jamie Richardson. Welcome to a new season of JFK 35. The John F. Kennedy Presidential Library is home to more than 24 million documents, 500,000 photographs, 35,000 artifacts, and tens and thousands of audio and video recordings. Together, they tell the story of a president, a family, and an era that reshaped America.
From the drafts of historic speeches to rarely seen family photos, the library's collections reveal the personal moments and pivotal decisions that defined JFK's presidency. And this season, we're taking a look into the archives and museum artifact collections. Each episode will invite staff members from the library and the foundation to share the items that inspire them most and the stories behind why they matter.
Our first guest is Library Director Alan Price. Alan has led the library since 2018 and previously served in the Obama administration as Associate Director of Management at the Peace Corps.
Alan, we're so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's terrific to be with you.
Alan, so this season is a little bit different. We've decided to talk to different people here at the library about some of their favorite collection items, whether it be a document, photo, artifact, and you're our first person up. Thank you for joining us. So let's just start with what are some of your favorite artifacts that you've picked out for us today?
I love the question. There are so many favorites, and I've picked out 3. 2 of them because they're origin stories. Yeah, everybody loves the making of the superhero and that origin story piece. So I have to lead with the coconut husk that we have on display.
All right. So just to give a little background, the coconut husk is from JFK's time in the military in World War II. And
Correct.
It is the subject of a daring rescue. Why don't you continue that story for us?
Well, when PT-109 was run over by the Japanese destroyer, the Amagiri, and 2 crew members were killed and 1 badly burned, and President Kennedy, obviously then Ensign Kennedy, led his surviving team to the nearest island where they survived eating coconuts, and then they were discovered by some Solomon Islanders who were actually working as scouts for the Australian Navy, and with a bit of charades demonstrated that you could carve a message in a coconut husk, and Kennedy did so. And that message, essentially 11 alive, Noro Island, native nose position, need a small boat, Kennedy, that is, I believe, canoed out to an Australian ship, which relays the message to the U.S. Navy, who had presumed that they had all been killed in the collision, and it leads to their rescue. And I think without that intervention, that help from the Solomon Islanders symbolized in that coconut husk, the rest of the Kennedy story could not have happened.
And so it's really interesting because when museum visitors first arrive, the coconut is one of the first things people see, right? You enter the museum and you sort of see JFK's pre-presidency life told in a single exhibit. And there, in one side of the wall, you see his time in World War II. He commanded this patrol boat, which we'll talk a little bit more, I think, with your next item. But here, after his patrol boat crashed in the South Pacific, he used this coconut. What do you think it's like for visitors when they come across and they see this sort of object as they're entering the museum?
Personally, I'd like to see that we could lift that up more, bring that story more to life for visitors. I think without any extra interpretation, it's just interesting. I think with extra interpretation, it's a wow sort of an item, arguably the most important item in our collection.
And it's something that President Kennedy kept with him throughout his career, his life. So I had family come recently and was able to tell them he kept this in his Oval Office as well. It wasn't just this little thing, but it's so important.
His father has it made into a paperweight. He has it with him his whole career. It was on the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. And you certainly see it in photographs of young Kennedy for Congress. It's on the bookshelf. It goes with him everywhere. I think it is the reminder of not only that incident, but the importance of what he will do with the rest of his life. Like, let's make this life worth something. We had this gift.
You mentioned, everyone loves to learn the origin story. What does this artifact tell us about the origin story that leads to the man that we know as president?
Well, I believe in his book, Profiles in Courage, certainly he lifts up the virtue of courage as the virtue most important to him. I think the coconut as a symbol is when he is courageous. He is heroic, even though he doesn't think of it himself as heroic. When asked about that, he just simply says, "They sunk my ship," right? He's doing his job, which is classic for that generation who served. But I think it is a wonderful origin story in the sense that I think it inspires every other person, every other everyday person to be more courageous in their lives and to do something in service to others.
Before we move on from the coconut to your next item, the last thing I want to ask is, this isn't just a Kennedy story with this coconut. There are two other men that are part of the story that maybe during Kennedy's time didn't necessarily get the same attention, but now that we're here, what do you want to say anything about the two men who helped Kennedy bring this coconut to the Australians, Biu Gagasa and Aroni Kumana?
Well, it's extraordinary that they served as well, and it's wonderful that there is later a reunion at the White House to bring folks back together. Certainly without their help, without those two gentlemen as Solomon Islanders, without the help of the Australian Navy, it took a lot of players to bring about this rescue.
And so now I want to turn to your second item, which is also connected to sort of this origin story. I'll again set the stage. So we kind of skipped ahead to the rescue, but what caused this rescue is that President Kennedy, in his small patrol boat with his crew of 13, they were hit by a much larger vessel, a Japanese destroyer called the Amagiri. In the night, it was pitch black. They had this collision, and you have this sort of note from some of the crew of the Amagiri. Why don't I let you pick it up from there?
Certainly, right. Imagine it's the middle of the night. It is pitch black. A PT boat makes a tremendous amount of noise. They would not have heard the Amagiri bearing down on them. They only had a few seconds to react, and they are completely run over. And from the perspective of the Amagiri, the assumption was, of course, all of the crew would have been lost on that ship. They wouldn't have thought about it. What most people don't realize is that the captain of the Amagiri had directed his helmsman to avoid collision, because you don't know, a patrol and torpedo boat, PT, having torpedoes, you never know, it could ignite one, and it could have hurt the Amagiri, but it did not. His helmsman disobeys a direct order and is later court-martialed for it. And when the captain of the Amagiri one day learns that Kennedy lived and survived Kennedy and the captain have a correspondence and reconnect after the war. And ultimately, the captain of the Amagiri travels to the United States to campaign for Kennedy for president. And when Kennedy is elected, all the still surviving crew from the Amagiri write a congratulatory note to Kennedy, which we have on display from time to time. And I just think it's a wonderful symbol of peace and reconciliation following the war, that even though governments can fight, individuals can, their friendships can transcend the hostilities of their governments.
And I think it's important to note that this isn't any ordinary note, right? It's not just a typed out thank you or congratulations.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Why don't you, I mean, I could try to describe it. Why don't you describe what it actually looks like and why was it done that way? I mean, you spent some time in Japan, so I think you would have a lot more understanding of why the Japanese would write a congratulations in this manner.
It's wonderful. It is somewhat in the style of Japanese calligraphy, in the sense that certainly all the crew sign their names in kanji, and there is a congratulatory note within it, but it is designed in a circle with text beneath it, and so it has an artistic quality, a sense of ma or open space within it. So it is not only a wonderful sentiment, it is in its own visual right a piece of art.
You spent time in Japan.
Yes, I lived there for a year, and I've been back numerous times.
And so this must be significant for you, being the director of the library, understanding that, at the time of Kennedy's service in World War II, these countries were enemies. And now you've kind of had the opportunity to watch and see that and have experienced now how close the two countries have become. What's it like for you to be director of this collection where you have things like this Amagiri note? What does it mean for you?
It means a tremendous amount. It's particularly meaningful to me when we can host the Consul General from Japan to come visit our collection, and we acknowledge that the history that initially brings Japan and the United States together is a contentious one, but that we've been able to move beyond that, and that our joint efforts to collaborate and work towards a more peaceful world are now what is most meaningful. I think that it has been important to me personally to be able to appreciate the greater fullness of history of Japan and that artistic aesthetic, both in the way we display Japanese holdings in our exhibits, but also in the way we exhibit our own American holdings. Can we do that in a way that embraces some more negative space, some more mindfulness about where things are positioned relative to other things? How do we use text in a way that educates but doesn't overwhelm? I think that both cultures have something to say about that.
All right, and then your third artifact that we will be talking about is a little bit kind of off the theme of World War II, of military leadership, war, and can you kind of describe to us what it is and why this one is important for you?
I really love the wedding dress that Jacqueline Bouvier wore when she married John F. Kennedy. I think that there's a wonderful origin story symbolism. It's not to say that marrying Jack was the most important thing in her life, but it's what brings her into our story as the First Lady. And I think there's something magical about the dress, its history, the designer, Anne Lowe, and her importance to American history, and particularly in dress design. And I think even though it isn't Mrs. Kennedy's favorite dress, it is wonderful, and its construction so elaborate. And with the passage of time, perhaps this is understandable, but sad, it has decayed to the point where the original dress is not suitable for exhibit. And so we had a wonderful partnership with the Winterthur Museum in Delaware, where they wanted to display the wedding dress, and we had to inform them that it just wasn't a possible option. And they sent a team, and we worked with them, and they were able to measure everything meticulously and photograph everything meticulously. And they went back to Winterthur and recreated a perfect replica of that dress, which they displayed and we will use for our display when we have our JBK 100 exhibit in 2029. And I think it is a point of fascination for so many people. They love Mrs. Kennedy's dresses. But for me, that's the one that is the core piece.
And you mentioned Anne Lowe, the designer of the dress. Can you talk a little bit about her importance to American fashion history, the Kennedy family story?
She designed so many important dresses. I believe she comes out of, is it Baltimore?
She's from Alabama, and
then she moves?
Yes, yeah.
Right. It's important to note that Anne Lowe is an African-American dressmaker. She hand stitches all this with incredible meticulous detail. And the original dress that she made for the wedding was actually ruined with water damage and other damage. And so she had to, I believe with 3 days notice, start from scratch and remake this wedding dress, which she did. And she had done a number of other dresses for the Kennedy family and debutante ball dresses and things like that. And there's a whole history to Anne Lowe that Winterthur did a wonderful exhibit on, and you can still find information about that exhibit on their website. I'm proud that we can have this bit of that American tradition and history in our exhibit.
This dress is on our Artifact website and says it's made with 50 yards of silk taffeta, which I cannot, that's so much fabric.
It's so much
fabric. It's, trying to do my math quickly here, but half the length of the football field. So that's a lot of fabric. And then to have to do that twice is incredible. And so the detail involved in that is incredible. And we also have kind of another fun fact is because it's so delicate is there's a paper replica made as well. So we kind of have two dresses in our collection here.
That's right.
And knowing that we have the Winterthur replica coming our way is also very incredible.
I think there's also, not just in the wedding dress, but in the importance of Mrs. Kennedy as a symbol and the family unit as a photographic symbol. And at a time when international tensions are at an incredible high with the Cold War, et cetera, that the first family does a great job in humanizing the White House for Americans and humanizing America for the world in a way that I think not only contributes to making it easier to have diplomatic discussions, but I think it contributes to, in some way, de-escalating some of the tensions.
I also think about when we try to get people to engage with the library, some people come in with an interest in space, and so space is their doorway, or World War II history, and that's kind of the doorway to learn more about the rest of President Kennedy's legacy. And Mrs. Kennedy, especially the wedding dress, right? This kind of is a doorway for people who may not be interested in President Kennedy's history naturally because of politics or history, but maybe because they have an interest in art or fashion or design, correct?
Absolutely. They are champions of arts and culture. There are so many hooks that make this administration particularly interesting that regardless of whether you're coming in as an initial person who initially doesn't like Kennedy or does like Kennedy, there are things here to pay attention to and learn from.
And Mrs. Kennedy is certainly, known for her fashion, and people always come looking for as much as they can see of her stuff. And because of preservation, we can't always have things out. But it also is a way, as Matt's kind of referring to, as a way to hook people to say, yes, she had amazing clothes, this wedding dress is amazing, and here's kind of the symbolism, or here's the strategy behind wearing what she wore.
I think most people underestimate the importance of their partnership as a couple. And there are so many instances where if you pay attention, you can see how she informs his views or helps him get his message out in a more effective way.
There's all those notes we have in the ceremonial room exhibit of her dashing off lines of poetry for him to recite, or suggestions for different state dinners. So
translating German.
Yes.
Yes.
French, German, Italian, Spanish.
All of that, all the language translation. Yes, when he writes a comment, essentially, what is that quote from Ulysses? She writes it out verbatim. Incredibly classically trained mind. Whereas Kennedy is brilliant in his own way. I think he spends much of his youth in a state that we might refer to as a late bloomer. And I think that he does not have at his instant recall some of the things that Mrs. Kennedy does, though he equally values them, in part because following his service in the war and other events, he becomes a much more serious student of history and life.
So we talked about these 3 items, and we're so happy to have you share those with us. Before we go, we're going to ask every person who comes in here a little bit about what they do. And you are obviously the library director. You have a very important role here. Not that every role is important here. What do you think of your role here as the library director, as a steward for these objects and for the things found in our collection?
It truly is an honor to serve. Many of you know that I served in the Obama administration, and I would often quip that the only thing more fun than serving the 44th president was I get to go back in time and serve the 35th president. And I also enjoyed a time as the acting director at the Reagan Library, so a different period of time serving the 40th president. And this is an important moment in history, and I think from a point of view of inspiring presidential rhetoric, it doesn't get much better than Kennedy, and his words are timeless, and making sure that people remember them and live up to those ideals. It's a wonderful challenge. And I would also add that there's so many lessons we learned in that administration that we don't want to lose those lessons. So whether it be just from a point of view of simple civics and how the government can work and the importance of raising your voice and improving your communities, to the importance of the physical fitness challenge and making sure that America is strong and healthy. All those messages bear repeating.
And as we talked about the things that are on display, things that cannot be on display, what's the importance of presidential libraries to keep these items, as well as the papers, the photographs, all of this wonderful material that we have here in the building?
We're very proud of our record of preserving, protecting, stewarding, and making accessible both the paper records and the artifacts of that administration. The history belongs to the people. And it is wonderful how many people access history through presidential history. And the fact that FDR's model of it should be decentralized through the country, I think it works. And not everybody makes it to Washington, D.C. to learn these lessons, so that they can come to more local repositories of the National Archives and Records Administration, I think is a very successful model. And I hope that for the next 100 years, we will win the battle to keep our president relative and connected to the changing times we face.
And speaking of, the next 100 years, as JFK becomes more and more in the past, what do you hope future generations will take away when they visit the library and look at some of the items that we've talked about here?
I hope that people will remember that a president's words are important, that a president, when they speak to the nation, have an opportunity to educate and inspire, to lift up the best in who we can be as Americans, and lift up the best of what we can be as a world of nations. I think that presidents have an opportunity and a responsibility to remind us of how we got to where we are, to add a perspective on where we are that gives us hope, and to lead us into a better future. I think President Kennedy did all those things very well, and I think it's important to see different examples of how presidents did that. President Kennedy is not the only president to have done that well, but he is one of several that I think are particularly noteworthy and give us words that we can all learn from and would do well to remember.
Thank you, Alan, so much for speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing your bit to make sure that the world remembers and the world learns and the world is inspired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to our first episode in our special Staff Picks series. If you're interested in learning more about some of the items discussed today, you can visit our podcast page for the episode. It includes links to photographs of all the items we mentioned today.
If you have questions or story ideas, email us at jfk35pod@jfklfoundation.org or tag us on social media at JFKLibraryFDN using the hashtag JFK35. If you liked what you heard today, please consider subscribing to our podcast or leaving us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening and have a great week.